I couldn't believe it. The Apple TV team member we were meeting with kept directing all of the technical questions to my male colleague. But guess what? I was the engineering manager. And I heaved an internal sigh and thought to myself, how many times has this scene played out? Despite the countless occurrences, though, I just resigned myself to believing that this is how it works in the tech industry. Later that afternoon, though, I had an unexpected email. Josie, I want to take a moment to apologize for my assumption earlier today. That was terrible gender bias on my part. I wanted to say I'm sorry, and I'm not going to let that happen again. Wow. I was stunned. And then I felt a little lighter and like a ray of hope. It showed me that change is possible and that small actions can make a big impact. But for most women in tech, these microaggressions, those small actions that can have a negative impact on marginalized groups, well, they go unacknowledged and they add up, each leading to being a drop in their inequity buckets. And what are some of these microaggressions that you might ask? Well, being called feisty for defending your team in a meeting, that's a drop. Not being invited out to drinks because the guys want to go talk about sports, that's a sexist drop. And then being asked to take notes because you're the only woman in the room, that is another drop. And guess what? These drops, they add up. And eventually, those inequity buckets are overflowing, leading to that fact that 56% of us are leaving tech after 10 to 20 years of giving it our best shot. And why is this important for you? Well, it's not just altruism. It makes business sense to focus on inclusion and diversity. Inclusive and diverse teams have 30% higher likelihood for higher performance and are more likely to thrive in a recession, which is pretty important in today's economic climate. By building inclusive and high-performing teams, we can not just retain and empower our talent, we can actually produce better products and services that fulfill more people's needs. And that's where my mission comes to play. I'm Jossie Haines, and I'm leveraging my 23 years as a software engineering leader at companies like Apple, Tile, and Zynga to retain women in this industry. And the mission is really twofold. I coach women leaders, and I empower them to thrive and stay. And I also work with technology companies and leaders to empower them to build inclusive and high-performing teams. And to help leaders do so, I've developed the empathetic management framework for building inclusive and high-performing teams. And it's made up of 3 phases, and given my passion for gaming, which started when I was 5 years old on my Commodore 64, it's got a bit of a gaming flair. So let's start with phase 1, and that's player 1 ready. And it starts with becoming a more inclusive leader through a foundation of empathy. And there's good news here. Empathy is a learned behavior, and it's also an essential business skill. And so leading with empathy means you use humility and compassion. It means you leverage effective and fair management practices. And you realize that this is a daily journey to being a better ally, because this is ultimately a learning journey and not a destination. Next is phase 2, multiplayer mode activated. And this is where you take those skills from phase 1 and you use them to build an inclusive culture that is so equitable and fair that everybody wants to work for you. And so what do? You create core values focused on inclusion, diversity, and high performance, and then you update your company's processes and ways of working to incorporate those core values. One example, check out that inclusive meeting checklist in your list of goodies and use that to enable your employees to feel safe speaking up, be heard, and feel valued. And remember, a key part of this phase is not just taking action, but measuring progress along the way and asking for feedback. And then finally, there is phase 3, theory craft in full effect. And this is where the magic happens. But yet, so often, companies fall short of these initiatives, and billions have been spent, honestly, with pretty little to show. But when you tie those inclusion initiatives to your business goals, and you hold your leaders accountable to those inclusive behaviors from phase 1, we all win. So next time you have a high performer on your team who maybe does amazing work, but then ends up turning around and belittling his colleagues, actually hold them accountable for the negative impact on the overall performance of your team. And I get it, these actions, they're not always easy. But everyone has the ability to make a difference by taking small daily actions on a regular basis towards building that more inclusive workplace. Because if we don't, we risk losing out on the world-changing innovations that women in tech and other minorities bring. And remember that together, we can change the future. Thank you. Woo!